Olzhas Suleimenov is a monumental figure, patriarch and classic of Kazakh literature. For more than 65 years, or 2/3 of his entire life, he has been creating his unique works. Despite his age, he keeps surprising us with his resonant sayings and sapid thoughts. Biknur Kisikov, writer, author of numerous novels, stories, and poems, member of jury of literature contest, inspirer and organizer of Kitab Fest Festival, founder of Kazakhstan Encyclopedia Project, encyclopedia.kz. At the capital's first forum of Asian countries' writers, where the president of the Republic of Kazakhstan has participated, Olzhas Suleimenov expressed a thought that has deeply resonated in many people's hearts. I will be straightforward. The level of science has rapidly decreased in all CIS countries over the last 30 to 40 years. The level of literature almost equals to zero, because silly perestroika turned literature into a regular product of a market economy. I am a representative of the generation of the 60s. In the Soviet Union, the 60s to the 70s were the happiest years for writers and art people. This was the time of the best movies and the best books. GDP was growing 8 to 9% annually. Neither before nor after have we experienced such thing. Suleimenov's thoughts are not revelations, however they are very sincere. His words have pricked the egos of his colleagues and fellow writers, and it wasn't the first time he was that straightforward. Over his creative lifetime, Olzhas Suleimenov has always been a tad rebellious. Today he symbolizes the very essence of everything powerful, monumental, and at the same time experimental that was intrinsic to the Soviet literature. There was a time when he couldn't even think of connecting his life to literature. A future poet was born in Almaty, in the family of a prominent Batir, Olzhas. Olzhas's father, Omar, was repressed in the 30s and later shot. Once, Lev Gumilyov has told Olzhas how he was serving his time in Norilsk camp along with the writer's father. After Suleimenov has graduated from school, he was enrolled in geology faculty at the Al-Farabi Kazakh State University. However, after his poetic gift is manifested, he had to reconsider his life choices and postpone his studies as a geologist-engineer. In 1958, Olzhas has entered poetry translation faculty at the Moscow Gorky Literature Institute. But he didn't finish his studies there. He was expelled. Some say it was because of a vulgar fight. Nonetheless, in June of 1959, his first poems were published in the literary newspaper. Interesting facts from Olzhas Suleimenov's biography. Was born on Krepostnaya Street, the very street that was mentioned in Rebellion, a story that was written by a Soviet writer and revolutionary, Dmitry Furmanov. Had to repeat a year at school because he has failed reading. Was planning to apply to the journalism faculty at the Kazakh State University, but his stepfather, journalist Abduali Karagulov, talked him out of it. 3 times he's encountered Yuri Gagarin. Along with Mikhail Sholokhov, he has once stayed at Gagarin's place in Vyoshinskaya Stanitsa. In 1959, Suleimenov has showed his first poems to Ilya Sylvinsky, a classic of the Soviet poetry. He looked through his verses and said, "Do you have an occupation?" "Yes, I am a geologist." "So keep being one. Your poems aren't any good." After this conversation, Olzhas Suleimenov has doubled his efforts in writing. In 1961, Olzhas Suleimenov has become extremely famous due to his poem, Earth, Kneel Down to the Man. It was dedicated to Gagarin's spaceflight. This work has shaken the world of Soviet literature the same way Gagarin's flight has. The poem was published in newspapers, and the leaflets featuring these verses were disseminated from the plains above Almaty and other Kazakh cities. Impressed by this epoch-making event and his own success, the poet has turned his verses into a poem in a week, and it was published in May. And it was something to be proud of, I'll tell you. The poem's success was colossal. 25-year-old Suleimenov has become a member of all Soviet delegations that visited Europe and the US. He was reading his poetry at Paris Sorbonne and Columbia University. In 1962, Olzhas started to work as literary contributor at Kazakhstanskaya Pravda newspaper. Later, he has become an editor-in-chief at Kazakh Film Studio, worked as the head of department at Prostor magazine, was the secretary on the board of the Writers' Union of Kazakhstan. In 1989, Suleimenov has remembered his rebel days and initiated a people's movement called NEVADA-Semipalatinsk, the main purpose of which was the closing of a Semipalatinsk nuclear test site and other nuclear test sites all over the world. We, the writers, every day receive letters from the regions that are situated in the proximity to the test sites. Letters where we read about extinction of entire families. And this is what we are supposed not to talk about. Not a single defense consideration will ever make us agree with the existence of nuclear test sites on the territory of the Republic. In the 90s, anti-nuclear movement is transformed into Congress of the People of Kazakhstan Party, and Suleimenov has become a deputy of the Supreme Council of the Republic of Kazakhstan. Olzhas Omarovich worked as a diplomat too. He was an ambassador extraordinary and plenipotentiary of the Republic of Kazakhstan to Italy, Greece, and Malta. And all this public life has nourished his biggest passion, literature. From 1961 and up to present days, he has written more than 50 books and hundreds of poems. One of the collection of his selected works, published in 1986, has more than 193 poems. And I strongly recommend you to read them. You will derive a great satisfaction from his exquisite style and colorful metaphors. Apart from this, Suleimenov is a well-known scholar and publicist. Among his most prominent research works is his book Az-Iya, where the author introduces his own concept of the historical context of the tale of Igor's campaign and the events that happened in there. Once Suleimenov was commissioned to write a poem dedicated to Lenin's centenary, but he has brought his clay book instead, for which he was heavily criticized. Although he has been criticized a lot, the poet was always above it. So the clay book poem consists of two parts. The first is the introduction that in prose tells us a story of some Ishpakai, an employee at a history institute. In order to become famous, Ishpakai comes up with an adventure. Armed with a chisel, he carves an engraving on the rock. And 20 years after the sun and rain make it impossible to determine the age of the engraving, he declares that he has found some ancient petroglyphs. Due to this fabricated scientific sensation, Ishpakai becomes a celebrity, Doctor of Sciences, and even a chairman of the jury of the contest for the best monument of some ancient leader. Oddly enough, but this leader's name was Ishpakai too, and as it turned out, he was our historian's ancestor. So what has our Ishpakai written in that engraving that was passing off as an ancient finding? And here is where the second part of the poem starts, the part that is written in verse. As you have already guessed, the poem is dedicated to Ishpakai, not the historian, but to his ancestor, the leader of ancient Ishkuz. Brave Ishpakai, Khan of the ancient Ishkuz, who conquered Assyria, is under trial for 9 crimes. The entire poem's plot covers the description of all his crimes. His main crime was that he fell in love. And who has he fallen in love with? Not with some distinguished queen, princess, or daughter of noble rulers of the conquered people. He has fallen in love with a slave, a rootless girl, temple prostitute called Shamkhat. to be loved and not to love in return. How difficult it is to be a woman in this world. I thought of women as of weak warriors. I despised them as I conquered them. Shamkhat is dear to me as the truth is dear. I am fulfilled. Persian. I found a foe. There was a reason why Olzhas Suleimenov picked the name Shamkhat for his protagonist. That was the name of the priestess of the goddess Ishtar in summer and Akkad mythology. She was Gilgamesh's associate and Enkidu's lover. She was one of the protagonists in the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the greatest written works of the ancient East. The Khan went mad. Ishbakai owned thousands of slaves and still is given himself up to the one of them. What a shame for the glorious son of the Ishkuz. He's given himself, his seed, and all the loot to hateful Shamkhat. What a humility for a rebellious Scythian. And how can he call himself a Scythian now? The Khan is reproached for betraying god Tingri and becoming a meek slave to his new goddess Shamkhat. He is reproached for becoming a common Persian who has exchanged his sword to a hoe. You could break our collarbone for a bride. You could throw us under the horses or into the lion's cage. But you have become a Persian. You picked up a hoe and hitting the ground you said, I locked the fire in the oven. Did I say? I fenced the space with the walls. Did I say? I turned a hoe into a sword. Did I say? Not Tengri, but a dog has produced me. Did I say? Ishbakai had nothing to answer to this. Yes, he was guilty. Yes, this girl drove him mad. But is it possible to be judged for love? How can one be punished for it? And then he has addressed his last words to the judges. He has commanded them to fulfill the last will of the departing Khan. He wanted to take his loyal warriors, brave Scythians, and try to break through the enemy lands into his native steppe. And if he couldn't make it, he would stay in the land of the Persians. And he would go to the heavens young. But he had his last will. The one who will defeat the great bull and take his place will marry a slave, a temple prostitute, Shamkhat, and he should make her a queen who is equal to the Khan. That was the deal. The most glorious sons of the Scythians started to prepare for the bullfight. A great amount of noble family sons have found their deaths under its hoofs. And then only one man, the most skillful, brave, and lucky one, has managed to defeat the beast. Ishbakai has blessed the winner and betrothed him with his lover. The next day, Ishbakai's army have hit the road. The enemy, superior in number, blocked their way. Ishkuz have defeated their opponents in a desperate battle. But they have lost a lot of great warriors, and Ishbakai, who was wounded in a cruel fight, has gone to the heavens young, as he once predicted. The Ishkuz dug a huge ditch and placed their fallen warriors at the bottom of it. And in the center they have erected a Khan marquee with Ishbakai's body in it. The second they were about to fill in the ditch, the Queen Shamkhat has appeared. She started to descend to the bottom of the ditch. No one tried to stop her. Once she entered the marquee, she lay down next to the Khan's body, and then pierced her own heart with a dagger so that she could stay there forever, sharing her lover's deathbed. At a first glance, it might seem that this satirical and even cynical story has no room for deep feelings. But it was the love that has become the main part and the very essence of this beautiful and incredibly melodious work. The work that has fully unleashed Olzhas Suleimenov's poetic talent.